right. We are here at Superbooth 18, and this is now actually our second interview with Aaron from 1010 Music, who's going to show us the new stuff that he has. And also I asked him to go through and really give a demo of his other product line. Now before we get started, you know, a quick note, I'm friends with Aaron, and in fact I came over here to Superbooth with him, so I don't want anyone to think anything else along those lines, but you know, I did it not to get paid, and I'm not getting paid. I did it because I really believe in the product, and I believe in what it is that he's doing. So with that quick disclaimer out of the way, let's start talking about this. Hi.
Hello.
How's your Superbooth been?
Very busy.
Yeah.
Happy to have you.
How are your feet feeling?
Looking forward to the show being over in a couple hours.
Absolutely. So Aaron, show us what's new for Superbooth 18.
For Superbooth 18, we're releasing a new product called the Euroshield. It takes advantage of a well-known module called Teensy, which is a flavor of Arduino. If you've had the chance to use it, you know that it's an open source tool that lets you run software on Mac and PC and build cool little algorithms. Unlike Arduino, it doesn't just max out at being able to do slow control type things. The Teensy can do audio related things like reverbs and filters and stuff that makes a lot more sense in the Eurorack context. So what we've done is we built a shield, something that made up with the existing Teensy module and turned it into a Eurorack module. So you see the Teensy right here, and then this entire circuit board, which also doubles as the front panel, turns this Teensy into a Eurorack module with a stereo audio input and stereo audio output. It amplifies the levels on both sides so that you can get a full -5, +5, and it goes all the way down to DC, so you can do audio all the way down to CB rates.
So you can use this, so this is really optimized for Eurorack much more than if you were to just buy an off-the-shelf Arduino or Teensy with line level outputs. That really wouldn't work anywhere near as well as what it is that you've built here, right?
Absolutely, and not only does it have specific levels for Eurorack, it's split them out into separate mono connections, which is how most things are done here in Eurorack.
That's wonderful. Hey, what are those two jacks above the audio input and audio output?
So these are MIDI in and out. They're using the standard MIDI protocol over a somewhat unusual connection, which I'm showing an adapter here. You've got your 5-pin pin going to a 3-wire connector. This is a somewhat popular way to go on Eurorack. We're using this approach as well as Arturia and a few other companies.
And my understanding is that that's also the MIDI approach that you're using for the rest of your boxes as well, correct?
That's correct. So that makes the Euroshield directly compatible with all the other boxes that we have.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about the user interface. What else is there available? What other hardware is available on this Euroshield?
We've included a couple other things like pots. There's 2 of them. There's 4 LEDs, which are a little hard to see, but between the pots and the module. And lastly, there's a button. And these are just miscellaneous controls that lets you do things like decay time or pitch or whatever else you need to do to turn it into a almost fully functioning real product.
Wow. So Aaron, tell me about this. Who do you think that this product is for?
This is for everyone who loves to craft their own instrument and is willing to put in a little extra work to learn how to write some software, or more importantly, just adapt some existing software. The toolset has lots of big building blocks, like you can just drop in a reverb with just a couple lines of code, and you can do things like a gated reverb pretty easily. In one example we put together, simply by putting a few blocks together and hooking them up to the knobs. So if this appeals to you, if you're already into patching, you don't mind firing up your computer and doing just a little bit of code, you can really take your development and capability to the next level.
And what's so cool about it is that once you write your program and put it on that little Teensy, then you can take this to the gig or to the recording studio, and you don't need a computer, and it'll just run as soon as you hit the button, right?
That's right.
Well, that's really neat. It seems like an experimenter's paradise along those lines.
Yes, let me add one other thing is we will be supplying at least 10 different examples. So not only do you have something to start from, you've at least got several things to choose from, and there's a substantial community online of open source that you can draw upon.
Wow. Hey, Aaron, when is this going to be out there in the public?
So this is going to be shipping in June. The pricing is still to be determined, and we're working with exactly on how we're going to ship it and where it's going to be available. You can come to our website and sign up for a newsletter, which will tell you when and how it's available.
Very good, thank you. Well, I think that now is a good time to come back a little bit, zoom out a little bit and take a look at your whole line of other products here. What I think is so interesting about what you have is that you now with Toolbox and Bitbox and Synthbox and FXbox, you literally could build an entire Eurorack system just by interacting with those modules alone. But at the same time, there's a ton of interactivity and interoperability with everything else that's out there as well. So it becomes a really good thing to work within your existing Eurorack system as well. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I mean, it's meant to be a complete system that has the ability to interact or work piecemeal with the other system as well.
So could you show us a little bit about, I guess let's start with Toolbox.
Sure, Toolbox is our sequencer function generator. It has up to 16 different cells that can do different things, everything from gate sequencing, where you can see here, you can simply touch the cells and add a new step, to node sequencing, which is more like a piano roll, which you may have seen on computer-based software, and you can do zooming and editing and adding and manipulation here from the touchscreen. Also, go ahead.
Excuse me, one thing I really wanted to point out is, one thing that's very much a hallmark of all four of these units is they're all touchscreen based, and the touchscreen isn't a gimmick, it really is a completely integral part of the user interface, and it wouldn't be the product that it is without them. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree. There's a lot of things that the touchscreen does for you and gives you access to controls that just otherwise would be very difficult.
Cool.
Moving on, the LFO has a number of settings. You can modulate it a few different ways. For example, you could use an internal LFO to modulate the depth of another LFO, and also adjust the rate. It also has beat sync options, so you can do things like have a quarter note synchronized LFO.
Wow.
Another level of control is through the CV sequencer. So simply by drawing a pattern with your finger, you can control the contour of these different steps. And this is a 16-step example. It goes all the way on up to 64 steps. As I mentioned, each of these cells can be configured, so you're seeing a 12-step, 12-cell arrangement that can go down to 16 if you pan to the lower right. If you look down here on this lower toolbox, you will see another arrangement in which we've got 16 steps, 16 cells, and we're showing the ability to capture and play back CV files. These are actually WAV files using a similar format to what we do on Bitbox, so these are 48 kilohertz, 24-bit files that can be stereo in or up to 8-channel output. And we're just showing a possible scenario where you could use an 8-channel WAV file to drive a laser show.
Wow. So let me understand this correctly. So what you're saying is you can have up to 16 different sequencers that are each running simultaneously and independent of each other except for the clock that's in common with all of them. So you could have 16 trigger sequencers or 16 note sequencers or any combination of the above, right?
There's a handful of limits on that. You can do up to 16 different things. You can certainly do 16 different node sequencers. You can do a hybrid arrangement of 8 LFOs, 8 step sequencers, and some of the other things like the wave outputs, you're requiring a CV out, so there's some caps on how many outputs and how many you can run at once, but a maximum of up to 16 things.
Wow, that's amazing. So what I've noticed about Toolbox and what I really, really like about it is its sort of real-time performance ability. I think it's just a terrific thing to be able to have in a live performing Eurorack setup because it's so quick and easy to be able to adjust stuff on the fly. Could you give us a quick demo of that?
Sure. I'm going to start by playing a sequence using just a couple of available cells. This is our mute mode where you can swipe your finger around and mute, unmute multiple things at a time. That includes the LFOs and the function generators. You can also dig in and as things are playing, drag your finger and add more cells.
So cool.
Or delete them.
So you can really draw your sequence as you're going in real time and it doesn't drop a beat or anything.
That's right. Here I can show you the step editing mode of Toolbox. Up here I've opened up a cell which is going to play through to our slice beat. And simply by choosing which key to play, it'll select which slice. So I'm going to do a lousy job of step editing a beat, so please bear with me. At least you're going to see what it's like to do. They're not necessarily the greatest creative choices along the way. Okay, we've just entered our sequence. I can now disengage step mode, hit play, and you will see just how not excellent my drum sequence is.
Wow.
Don't quit my day job. All right, so that is the step sequencer mode. Did we talk about LFOs?
We did not talk about LFOs.
LFOs are an internal function generator which have a variety of waveforms to choose from. You've got depth control. You can use internal modulators to modify that depth control, and you can also use external modulators. For example, if you wanted to change the rate with the external one source, simply dial it in, choose an amount, and there you go.
So you could take a CV source and use it to drive the tempo of all the sequencers, for example, or something like that?
The tempo is a master controlled thing, but a CV source could certainly adjust things like step count, transposition,
Cool.
or step size.
All right, great.
This is your CV control engine. You can draw in a pattern and have it played back using anywhere from 16 to 64 steps. And this is a great way to get sort of a custom LFO shape if you need that.
What could you see using that for in a musical context?
It's great for creating sort of step patterns, you know, the giving a voice, kind of jumping around. Pitch is an obvious example where you want steps as opposed to continuous control. Sometimes just having steps in that filter gives a certain characteristic that's like, you know, common plugins that do that kind of thing.
Cool, thank you. Right on.
All right, moving along.
Yeah.
We have Bitbox. Bitbox has three major ways to work. You can play one-shot samples, like these drums. You can play slices, like we were just playing here, taking a wave and splitting it apart into multiple pieces. And lastly, you can take loops. You can take a full-length Ableton style loop, like a drum loop, and have it conform to tempo and without changing the pitch. You can control the samples both from external gate inputs, like we're doing here with these colored input for the drums. You can use MIDI for that purpose, and you can also trigger it from the screen.
So that I understand right, so we've got this sort of this square of 16 different cells. Each of those represent a single sample, which could be a loop or it could just be a one-shot trigger. And each of those can be triggered. Each of those have an individual input there that you can use to trigger from the rest of your analog system. Right?
That's right.
Very cool.
Bitbox has a similar modulation scheme to what we just saw on Toolbox. You can take something here and, for example, choose what's going to modulate the pitch, what's going to modulate the level, and a variety of choices, including the ability to stack 3 modulators against one destination.
Wow. Sounds like you could make an awful lot of complex stuff along those lines.
Yes, you can make an awful lot of noise. That's Bitbox. You've got 4 audio outputs. You can address them either as 2 stereo pairs or individually. And your samples live on the micro SD card, so you can either bring them over from a computer or capture them from the line input.
Aaron, is there a length limitation to the samples that you can use here?
There's no practical limit except the wave file limit, which is 4 gigabytes. So quickly you're going to run into situations where it's impractical to play something that's 6 hours long or whatever the numbers wrap out to be. The internal memory is being used largely as a cache, so you don't have to worry about something being just too long to not fit in there. It will always fit. And you can play up to 16 samples at once, provided you're not streaming more than 4 at a time.
And one thing that I've mentioned to people that I use Bitbox for all the time is I use it as a tape recorder. So I have the outputs of my master output from my Eurorack normaled into the inputs of this thing, and as soon as I finish coming up with a wiggle that I really like, I just hit the record button and I'm off to the races and I've captured it. So that's actually one of my favorite uses of this thing.
Great, I'm glad you found that, and it's really handy to have things that are to loops that are cut to length and even cut to predetermined lengths.
Sure. What's this next one over here?
Synthbox is our wavetable polyphonic synthesizer. You can play up to 4 notes at once. It's got a fairly complex voice architecture for each of those 4 notes. You've got 2 wavetable oscillators and a sub oscillator. You've also got 2 filters, a handful of articulations, and a common preset scheme that lets you fly all those parameters in at once. The modulation schemes will seem quite familiar now. You've got 3 different ways to modulate a lot of different parameters, like the filter cutoff in this example. You've got MIDI velocity and MIDI pitch available here from this list. And you've got a couple of different filter types. Why don't we play something to give you a better idea of what that sounds like?
Sure.
A little soft. And you can see that we're using an internal sequencer to modulate the pitch, and that's how we're getting those patterns within the existing held notes. There's lots of other presets. I'll just quick jump to another one that I know is pretty good. A little hard to hear in this setting.
Sounds like a big old pipe organ to me.
Yes, you can use MIDI to control it. That's a handy way to get the polyphony. You can also use 4 rows of CV if you prefer. So that would require a minimum of 4 gate signals, 4 pitch signals, and then you can modulate each of those external inputs per voice if that's how you prefer to do it.
So in other words, you could get polyphony with this thing by using a bunch of different analog sequences, each of them sending out gate information and pitch information, and be able to use this as 4 unique, separate polyphonic voices.
Yes, one thing to realize though is that it's monotimbral, so you need to have each voice playing the same way.
Very cool. Very cool.
The last thing on our list is the FXbox. It is a performance effects unit. You're seeing an existing preset. I'll load something blank to sort of give you a better sense of what's going on there. And if I load up a couple of presets up here, I'll be able to play you some samples a little bit more easily. What you'll hear are these drums going through this. You'll hear the drums now all going through the FXbox. There's 16 different effects you can punch in either directly from the touchscreen, from the gate signals like you've seen with Bitbox just a moment ago. You can use modulators like you could with all our other products. And most importantly, you can put a sequence behind the scenes. So right now I'm going to sequence the bit crusher so that half of the time what you're hearing is a bit crushed. Now that's just one of the elements. It gets really crazy when you start sequencing multiple, which is how it runs when you pull in presets like this. Now, of course, this stuff is much better to hear through headphones or through a direct connection, but it sounds really cool, and our customers really love being able to trick out beats either a little bit or a lot. It also works quite well for pads with different material. You want to use a different set of algorithms, but we've got some presets that make that sound really cool too.
Wow, that's cool. And I think you've got some more examples up on your website, right? So people can hear the audio actually not down a trade show floor.
Yes, we absolutely do. There's a couple of FXbox videos you can use. And I encourage you, if you already have a Bitbox or a Synthbox, to remember that you can swap firmware. That's a great way to try it out and see what it sounds like.
Wait a minute. Back up one more time. What did you just say?
With all of our Series 1 modules, which if you take a look down here, Series 1 includes Synthbox, Bitbox, and FXbox. You can switch between them simply by doing a firmware change. If you go to our website, download a new file, put it on your micro SD card, and do a simple power-up sequence, you can turn any of them, like a Bitbox, into a Synthbox, for example, or all the way around.
So when you buy one of them, you get all 3 of them.
That's right.
That's a little bit of a deal, I would say, but...
Yes, people are usually quite happy about that.
Hey, Aaron, I want to thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure hanging out, talking, and have a safe trip home.
Thank you, you too.
All right.
Thanks for the coverage.